Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I'm here with just a quick, basic review for you guys of a game that's a little different from some of the stuff I normally cover. This is Sleeping Gods by Red Raven Games, and this one is a awesome one. I gotta say, I really do like this game, and this is one that I would definitely put down as a family game, a group game, a good solitaire game. It's one not really focused on like combat or units or troops or anything like that. This one's all about painting a narrative, painting a story that you get to participate in with whoever you want to game with. And it's perfectly fun to play by yourself if you are so inclined. I've actually been playing it a little bit here, a little bit there when I had just a few minutes, and I'd go through a couple of quick turns, and it's great. It's really enjoyable. First off, I'm not going to cover a whole lot of it, and that's because I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it because it's narrative. It is a story game. There's no way I can really show you a lot of it without spoiling it for you, spoiling the experience. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you some basic thoughts why I think you should try it out if you are into these types of games. Obviously, if you're not into the narrative base, if you're not into a game telling you a story, this one is a complete pass. But if you are, this is one you want to check out. So if you have played games like The Seventh Continent, as an example, or Tainted Grail, that's another one that's in a similar vein. That one's much more combat heavy than this one. But games of that nature, this is one you want to take a look at. When it comes to the components of the game, components are definitely top-notch, good quality. It has standard rulebook that you would expect, glossy paper with, that type. All right, it's color, fine. Doesn't need a whole lot of explanation. Does include a little player aid that would be better if it had just a little bit bigger type, because some of us who are starting to age have not perfect eyesight. So do keep that in mind, but I'm sure you can probably download one that's spaced out a little bit better. When it comes to saving and keeping track of your games, they have included, and I love it when they include stuff like this, a nice notepad here that's full of sheets for however many ones that you need. I'm sure you can scan this and print off more if you need them or download them online. These are front and back with you able to record your information here on the front for saving your games. And then on the back, keeps track of the map because there's a lot of maps that you're going to go around on this. And you can freely write on this, take little notes. I've actually taken a few notes on mine, which I won't show you because I don't want to spoil it. But yes, you can put your notes onto the map. That way you can remember because you might want to come back to a place and check it out later. So definitely good inclusion that they've got going here. As far as the rest of the components go, they're your standard game quality components, right? You're going to have cards. The cards are perfectly thick. They're fine. You don't want to get them wet, that type stuff like usual. It's got a mix of wooden and cardboard tokens. Most of them are the cardboard tokens, but they do have a fair selection of the nice little wooden ones. You're going to have things like your little command tokens or health tokens here that are nice and wooden. I do like those. Or things like your combat tokens, which we'll touch on combat here in just a second. You get 4 of those. And you've got a neat little meeple that is used to keep track of what actions are being done on your board. And your little miniature ship that you get to use on your map that you keep track of where your ship is. Because in this game, you are the crew of the Manticore and you have been cast off to these strange islands and you're trying to wake the sleeping gods by finding totems. That's as much of the story as I'm going to tell you. You really need to find out the rest of it on your own. I do like the fact that they give you a starting point in this game. There is a quick start guide. Begin here, and this starts your quest, and it walks you through how you're going to play the game. So even after you've read the rules, When you start getting into this, it has examples of play that show you exactly how the game's played out. All of its mechanics when it comes to the shipboard, when it comes to using your crew, and then combat. All of that is kind of walked out in a beginner aspect here with the quick start. That way, once you get done with this, you know the basics of how the game works, you know all of its mechanics, and it gives you a couple of quest cards to go on with. Speaking of quest cards, one of the neatest aspects is this little magnetized treasure box here. And of course, it's got extra space for expansions. There is an expansion for this game that unfortunately I don't have yet because I can't find it anywhere. Hopefully I'll be able to track it down one day. But all of these cards are organized by number. Make sure you leave them in there. You've got adventure cards and quest cards in here. A mess load of quest cards are in here, and you can play through the entirety of the game and not see all of these cards, not even by a fraction of the margin, because you're not going to encounter everything. There's kind of a time limit in a way for the game built into it, so you're going to travel around, but there's no way that you can travel around everywhere. And then adventure cards that you will stumble upon as well that will give you other items and things and quests and missions and all the other cool stuff. And I just love how they have it in this little treasure chest. And I was so tickled to find out they've got little magnets built into this. It stores so easily. And that's one of the great things when it comes to games like this is you worry about storage. The box has a nice tray in it to be able to get everything back in it once you've opened it up. It is nice when they take that player quality of life stuff into account. Now, besides your quest box, you're also going to have your quest book. Again, we're not going to dig into it because I want you guys to experience it on your own if you are so inclined. But you guys see the quest book is large. It's what you would expect from a quest book if you played something similar to this. You'll come upon a quest that says do X, and it'll tell you read passage 12 or 12.1 or whatever it is in the book. You'll do whatever it is there. You'll make your choices, pass your test, do your challenge, have a combat, whatever happens. And then it'll tell you either go back to the ship where you go back to playing the game, or you'll continue on with more passages, just depending on what happens in that scenario. Your other main component, and I'm not worried about showing you this little map piece because this is where you actually start the game at. It's the little first page of it. Is your map, and you can flip through this to see that there's many different areas and they all connect in some way, shape, or form. Now, they're not all directly connected to each other, but there's little arrows on them. Like, let's roll over and show you guys here. You see where it says 16 if you sail off this way, or 13 if you sail off this way, 8 if you sail off this way, and then you'll flip to whatever page depending on what you've got going on at the time. And then there are also, as you can see, multiple things to do. All of these reference some passage in that storybook. And then you have things like ports where you can go and do trading and buy supplies and repair your ship. And sometimes there's tests if you pass through a certain area. This is a strength test, which we'll touch on here in just a second. Now, the big thing about this game is maintaining your ship and your crew. You know, you can't see all the crew because this is the one thing that kind of gets me about this game. It is kind of a table hog. It takes a lot of space. You really need to be able to spread out. That's one drawback, but it's kind of to be expected with games of this nature that you're going to need a fair amount of space. There's a lot going on with it. With your shipboard, let's actually move some of this stuff off so I can show you guys. It shows you all the different stations in your ship, and this correlates to our little meeple here. So as a player takes their turn, they will pick a station on the ship, and you can't pick the same station twice in a row. You have to go somewhere else. And you can do whatever it is. Now, before you do that is when you do an event. So you'll do an event, do a ship action, So depending on what ship action you do, you'll get so many of these command tokens that can be used in a just huge variety of ways. You'll want as many of these as you can possibly get. They can be used to activate skills. They can be used to attach ability cards to your characters, making them stronger. They can be used in so many ways. I can't even list them all. You want as many of these as possible. It is going to vary though, depending on the number of players. And you guys see even here, 1 to 2 players versus 3 to 4 players on the back. With 1 player, you do get less of these command tokens to hold on to, and that's because you have access to the entire crew. The crew, besides the captain, get divvied out amongst the players that are in the game. So if you've got 2 players, each player will take half the crew. If you got 3 and 4 and so on, you'll start spacing these crew members out amongst everyone, and they'll be able to use whatever crew members are under their command and the captain on their turn. So with 1 player, since it's 1 person going, turn after turn after turn, you get fewer of these command tokens, so you can't effectively kind of like game the system. It's a difficulty measure in a way because you have access to all the crew on each of your turns. But a lot of options, things like healing up your crew, doing search actions, getting command tokens, taking command tokens off of characters, because that's a big thing. Once you put them onto a character, you need to be able to get them off. That's what some of these ship actions have going on with them as well. You can do things like searches, which involve these tokens that can give you resources, but they can also give you banes as well, like hurt your morale or cause your ship to become damaged, right? So you have to put some of these red blocks as such onto your ship, and your ship can only take 11 damage before it's like fully damaged. So you want to try to keep that damage down as much as possible. On your shipboard, you'll also keep track of what supplies you have, things like food or repair supplies, and your money, which are these little coin tokens. And it's cumulative, right? So it's not divided out amongst each player. The crew has so much money that they can spend when they go to port. After you get done with your ship action, you do your event. Event is one of these cards, and we'll flip to the bottom one just to give an example. This one is hidden supplies. Gain 1 grain, but this person takes a little bit of health damage. Stuff like that, but that's easy events. And then there's medium level events, and then there's hard level events. And like I said, these kind of control the time limit that you have with the game, because you're going to go through this deck. There's going to be 18 cards in it, 6 of each type. You're going to go through it once and then read a certain passage. You're going to go through that many again, read a different passage, and then go through it a third time and then read a separate passage. So that's kind of your soft time limit when it comes to the game. You can keep track of how many of these event cards that you've gone through. There are a bunch that come with the game. So as you play through it, you're not always going to be seeing the same event cards. After you do your event, you can do 2 actions, and that's things like traveling, which is moving the manticore across the map. And that's going to involve your skills, which we'll touch on here in just a second. Exploring, which is basically reading a passage having to do with one of the numbers. Market, buying goods and stuff like that. Going to port, which is another action you can take at certain places across the map that do have ports. Now, I know I'm hitting this really quick and I'm saying a lot of stuff very quickly, but that's because there is a fair amount going on with this game. There's just no way I can cover all of it without spoiling it for you, which I really don't want to do. But let's show you guys a character board really quickly. This is the captain. We have Captain Sophie Odessa. We have her health, some of her special abilities, things like spending a couple of those command points to add +1 accuracy to one of her attacks. And she has a rifle, which we see gives her +1 accuracy, but it does 4 damage. It's really good. And she's got 1 block, which is nice, but she can spend a couple of command to get another block. On the right, are all the skills that she has access to. Now, since she's the captain, she's got them all. Strength, perception, cunning, naval, I forget the exact name, and then like crafting there at the bottom. But depending on what skill check you have to make, you need to have that skill symbol. Now, the rest of the crew, they're not going to have those symbols always attached to them. We see Kasumi here does not have an inherent strength skill, but I was able to attach a card to her, one of the ability cards, and you can pay the cost at the top to attach that, and you have that symbol now added to that character plus whatever ability is there. So I could discard this card to redraw an ability card, one of these that's basically the dice of the game. The number up here will determine what your roll is, and it's going to be between 1 and 6, just like a 6-sided die. So as you go on, you'll get more of those ability cards, which you can discard for certain bonuses or pay the command points to add them to your characters. You definitely want to add those not command cards, but ability cards. You want to add them to your characters as soon as possible, definitely early into the round. That way you have those extra abilities for your skill checks, because when we do a skill check, just the shorthand of it is you will pick what characters are going to help with it. So let's say we're doing a strength check. We could add her and Laurent here, since she has that ability attached to her and he has a strength, but we would have to add fatigue tokens to them. And then if they were used again, you would add a second fatigue token to them. And once they have 2 fatigue tokens, they now have a negative modifier applied for combat, and they can't be used for any more skill checks until you remove some of that fatigue from them. So fatigue can start to build up on your crew when you use them for certain checks during the game. And just to show you guys another quick aspect of it, combat is going to be against cards like these. Don't worry, these are the first 2 from the training manual, the quick start. So this is the ones you're first going to fight to learn the game. And you notice here at the bottom, there's kind of a grid going on, and the spots that have hearts are the ones that have their health, right? So once all those hearts are covered, they are effectively eliminated. Now, combat does have a back and forth element to it. I won't bore you by getting long-winded on it, but understand these numbers here at the top are the damage they do. The numbers in the skull underneath it have to do with their accuracy. And just like doing checks or doing attacks, it all comes down to this deck, which is effectively your dice. Whenever you're performing something like that, you're going to draw a card and look at the number at the top left. And if it meets or beats it, that means you've passed your check or you've hit them in combat. Now, sometimes you will have an accuracy bonus, like Kasumi here has +2 to her accuracy. So if she were trying to hit an enemy, she'd actually score a 7 and do 3 damage. That would allow her to do a strike against the enemy and fill these blocks down here at the bottom. But they can only be filled orthogonally. All right, so think of it like you're doing a straight slash or you're attacking them. You have to fill blocks that connect to the blocks that you've hit before. If she were doing 3 damage, going right down the center of this enemy would be a good way to do it, because it would be able to kill the enemy right off the bat. Plus, that gives a synergy bonus, which allows her to give her token to someone else, which gives a bonus that they can use, which would be a +1 in damage. Now, combat gets a little more in depth than that. There's a back and forth effect that when you attack an enemy, they will attack back and cause damage to you. Your blocked number will block so much of the damage. If you can fill the spots that have their damage, then it will reduce bonus damage they do. Like this brute has 3 base, but it has 2 extras, 1 from its head and 1 from its arm. So if you fill those spaces, then those extra 2 bonus damage don't get to go through. And obviously, as you go on, the enemies will get tougher and they'll change and they'll have hearts in different spots. There's flying enemies that need a ranged weapon to be able to hit effectively. Lots of little cool things that come into play when it comes to combat. So when it comes to Sleeping Gods, it is a fun game. What they've done is effectively turned this deck of cards into the D6. It's a fairly large D6. I think there's 60 cards in this little ability deck here. And you have the ability to adjust it a little bit as well because you want higher numbers in there for yourself. So if you take lower number cards and attach them to your characters, then you know that that deck is tweaked just a little bit more in your favor. On the flip side, though, if you take the better cards and attach them to your character, like there's only so many sixes in there, then that's going to hurt the deck and make it more likely to have those lower cards popping up for your checks. Also, there's a couple of difficulties when it comes to the game. There's one where it's normal difficulty, where if your ship is destroyed or your crew is taken out, that you can basically restart at a nearby port with a little bit of damage done to you, but it kind of heals you back up and gets you back into the game so you don't have to start over from scratch. But they do have a hardcore mode in the game if you so desire that if you lose and boom, you have to start over from the beginning. So I know that I've only really touched on a handful of mechanics and shown you that it's got good components. And like I said, I can't show you the story without really spoiling it for you. I can tell you that you're lost in an area you don't know, you're on a ship, and you're trying to figure the area out. My biggest tell to you is if you like those storytelling games, if you like Seventh Continent, if you like Tainted Grail, if you like anything else along those lines where it's very narrative based, but this one is a little different in that there's a lot of stuff. I'm not talking about just action, but there's neat things that are happening that you can actually affect as you go through the course of the game. I can tell you a few of the first places I went to, I was kind of surprised at the choices that I was making. And it really did affect it in that branching path. But it wasn't the branching path so much as if you take path A, you're going to succeed. If you take path B, you're going to fail. So you have to find a way to take path A. Either path will keep leading on in a story. It'll just lead on in different directions. Now, you might end up in the same area later on, but what happens in between on each of those two paths is going to be different. And it could be 3 paths. It could be 4 paths. It could be anything. There's so much of this game that I haven't even seen yet. And I've been playing at it a little bit here, a little bit there when I've had the chance. So if that sounds good to you, if that sounds interesting, definitely one worth checking out. I see like I said already, that they do have an expansion for it. So there is more story. If you play through it quickly, it is available. Unfortunately, the Tides expansion is sold out. So hopefully that will get reprinted and put out there again, because it's just scalpers putting it out. And I would like to see them either put out more games in this vein or even more expansions for the game. A whole new game set up very similar to this with a different narrative. I'd be perfectly fine to jump into it. This game sold like hotcakes, and there's a reason for it. It's just a flat good game. Definitely recommend it for families, for kids who want to play it with you, wives, husbands, whoever. If you've got someone who's not traditionally into board games, they don't like the heavy stuff, maybe they like a little bit lighter. This one is more medium complexity. There's a fair amount going on, but it's got enough that's going to keep a hardcore board gamer interested in it. But you'll be working together to flesh out your decisions for that story and which direction you want to go, what choices you want to make, and then kind of just seeing how everything unfolds as you progress. Even trying to interpret what's on the map, because some of the clues are just a little bit vague. They tell you a general area and what you're looking for, so you kind of have to look at the map. I remember I was looking at it and like, okay, wait, what are they? Oh, I see on the map what they're talking about. So I must go to this section and check that area, and I'll find something. So yeah, wholeheartedly recommend it, but I only recommend it for certain people. There are some people, the ones that are, hardcore and competitive, skip this one. It's not going to be for you. This is someone who really wants a cooperative experience that tells you a good narrative while you're at it. All right, but feel free to put your comments down below. Let me know what you think. You guys take care. I'll see you in the next one.